For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future, right? Jeremiah 29:11. He has so much more for your life than you could ever possibly imagine. If you're tired of living in survival mode and questioning your worth and faith after divorce and want simple steps to heal, drop that shame and guilt, and rebuild your confidence, you're in the right place. Hey, I'm Lori Ann, certified Christian life coach and midlife divorce mom of 2. I learned the secret of how to heal after divorce and rebuild my life through faith-based strategies that changed everything. And if you're ready to remember who you truly are, rediscover your purpose in midlife, love well again, and care for your body and soul, welcome to the club. You're in the right room. Hey girl, before we dive in, I want to personally invite you to join the Midlife Comeback Club. If you're a Christian woman who's healing after divorce and you're tired of trying to figure all of this out on your own, this is exactly why I created this space. Inside the Midlife Comeback Club, you'll get my transformational 90-day program, weekly live coaching calls with me, your certified Christian life coach, and a community of women who definitely understand exactly what this season feels like. So if you're ready to stop surviving and start rebuilding your life with some faith, confidence, and purpose, click the link in the show notes and come join us. All right, let's get into today's episode. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I see all the time with divorced women, especially Christian women in midlife. And it's this: so many women stay stuck in survival mode for way longer than they need to. Now, let me be really clear first, okay? If you're in survival mode right now, this is not me judging you by any means. This is not me saying, you should be over it by now. This is not me piling guilt onto a woman who's already carrying way too much. This is me just putting language to something that so many women are experiencing but don't fully understand. Because survival mode can feel normal, right? After divorce. In the beginning, it completely makes sense, right? You're trying to make it through the day. You're dealing with all of the emotional fallout from the divorce. You're figuring out your finances, you're holding it together for the whole family, for your kids, and you're trying to just keep a roof over your head, right? And put some food on the table. And you're managing schedules. You've got paperwork that seems endless at times, right? Your emotions are all over the place. And you probably have like 1,000 thoughts running through your head at all times. I know I used to. And of course, you're going to go into survival mode, right? That part is completely normal. And what becomes a problem, though, is when survival mode becomes your identity. And when it's no longer just a season, it becomes actually the way you're living all the time. And this is on my heart because I know that there are so many women listening right now who have been in survival mode for so long that, you don't even realize that you're in it anymore. You might be just thinking, this is just my life now, right? This is just how I am now. This is just what happens after divorce, right? This is all I can expect from life now. This is it, God. I guess this is what I'm left with. I can't expect too much from my life. And that's not the case. And I need you to hear me when I say this, okay? Survival mode may have protected you for a season, but it was never meant to be something that's a permanent home. God didn't call you, to spend the rest of your life emotionally exhausted every day, completely numb spiritually and overwhelmed, right? Disconnected from yourself. That's not what he wants for your life. And you may have been surviving, but you were made for more than just survival. That's not where you're supposed to stay. So in today's episode, I really want to talk about why so many divorced women stay stuck here, right? And what survival mode actually looks like. And most importantly, how to begin getting out of it. Because we want to move forward somehow. At some point, there comes a time when you're going to reach a crossroads where you can either stay stuck in the survival mode forever, or you can start making choices to move your life forward. Because once you understand what's really going on, I think you can stop blaming yourself and start moving forward with real intention. So I know this one personally because after my divorce, I lived in survival mode for a very long time. And at first, I didn't even realize that's what it was. I had no clue. I just thought I was doing what I had to do. I was showing up, I was taking care of all the responsibilities, I was keeping things moving forward, I was taking care of my kids, and I was handling all the things that needed to be handled. From the outside, I probably looked okay, like I was doing fine, not great, but okay. I might have looked capable, I might have looked responsible to some people, I might have looked like I was functioning. But inside was a completely different story. I was exhausted. I wasn't just physically tired. I was like soul tired. Like my soul was so completely exhausted. And I was just running on fumes. I was getting through my day, but I wasn't actually living. I wouldn't say you could call it living. I wasn't feeling much of any joy, if at all. I wasn't feeling any peace. I wasn't feeling very connected to anyone, much less myself. And if I'm being really honest about that season of my life, I didn't really feel connected to God either. And that was really, really difficult because survival mode will do that to you. And some of you might be there right now, but I can tell you it will get better. Survival mode will narrow your world down to, what do I need to do to get through this today? And just get through the day, right? And while that may be helpful in a huge crisis like you're in the middle of, possibly at the moment, it's a terrible way to live long term. And that's not what we want for your life. I remember realizing one day that I'd gotten really good at functioning, but I was not healing. I had gotten, really good at carrying everything for myself and everybody else around me, but I felt trapped, like I wasn't free at all. I'd gotten really good at keeping it all together, right? But I lost touch with what I actually needed. And that was a huge wake-up call for me because I knew I didn't want to build the rest of my life from a place of, panic and this exhaustion that I was feeling. And to be honest, I was just completely numb. I was emotionally numb. And I didn't want my divorce to define me forever, right? I didn't want just getting by to become my whole life story. I had imagined so much more for my life, and I didn't want that to be who I was becoming or what my life was going to look like, just survival mode and getting by. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you've become the strong one, that capable one, right? The one who handles it all, does all the things for everyone in your family around you. But underneath all of that strength, you're really running on empty. And if that's you, I want you to know that you're not weak and you're not failing. You're likely just stuck in the survival response that made sense, right? In the middle of this crisis that you just have gone through. But now it's time to heal. So, more importantly than all of this, I want you to begin getting out of survival mode if you've been stuck there for a while now. And I want to walk you through how you can do that step by step here, okay? Number one, survival mode often starts as protection, right? This is where it begins. So survival mode is not proof that something is wrong with you. It's proof that your mind and your body are really just trying to protect you from the traumatic experience you've just gone through. And when something traumatic or deeply painful happens to us, like your divorce, your nervous system responds. So you automatically go into coping mode. You focus on all the essentials, food, shelter, clothing. You shut down what feels too overwhelming to process, and you become hyper focused on just managing your life. And for some of us, that can look like staying busy all the time, right? Constantly doing, planning, fixing, controlling, not letting yourself feel anything, right? Avoiding rest, because rest feels kind of unsafe. If you sit down too long, you might have to be alone with your thoughts. That was a big one for me. I was highly productive. I stayed busy all the time. I did not want to sit down and rest. You could feel guilty anytime you slow down. That was a huge one for me too. Telling yourself, I just need to get through this week and then I'll worry about how I feel next week. And that turns into, I just need to get through this month. I just need to get through the holidays, or I just need to get through the school year. I just need to get through this next season. And before you know it, years have gone by, right? And you wake up one day and you realize, where did the last 2, 3, 4, 10 years just go? I have been stuck in this mode for far too long. So the first step out of the survival mode is really naming it. Not shaming yourself for it because you've been there too long, not judging yourself, but just naming it and ask yourself, like, am I really living right now, or am I just managing? You can ask, how have I gotten so used to carrying everything that I don't even know how to rest anymore? Like, I remember feeling really uncomfortable just to sit down on my couch and maybe watch TV for a half an hour. Was very strange to me because it was like, I felt like I should be doing something to counteract what we had all just gone through, me and my kids. Am I staying busy because it feels productive? Ask yourself that. Or because I'm afraid of what I'll feel if I stop. Because awareness is where healing really will begin. And you can't change what you're going to refuse to acknowledge, right? So I really want you to start there. Number 2, many women will stay stuck because they never gave themselves the permission to grieve. This is a huge one. A lot of divorced women, go straight into functioning mode, right? They don't grieve properly because they don't feel like they have the luxury of grieving. Like, I don't have time for that. I have to take care of the household. I have to take care of my kids. I have to go to my job. I've got my life to manage, right? I've got bills to pay. And if you're a Christian woman, you may even feel pressure to be strong in the Lord, right? And act like you're okay long before you actually are. But grief does not disappear just because you ignore it. It just waits and it will get buried, but it will rear its ugly head, trust me, down the road if you just ignore it. Because it will leak out like as irritability, right? Or just like you feel numb. You could have like anxiety. You could have lots of resentment. You could just be exhausted all the time, or just completely emotional shutdown. And sometimes survival mode, just is really just unprocessed grief, wearing like what I like to call a productivity outfit, right? Because if you let that sink in, that's really, I think, how I can best describe how I felt during that season. I was like highly, highly productive. When I look back, I realized, wow, like how did I do all those things that I was doing every day? And I became like hyper focused on time management. And I was just like the time management productivity queen. And I wore it like a badge of honor because it was like, man, I could do this, I can do that. And I'm taking care of my kids. I'm juggling my businesses. I'm working. I'm, putting food on the table. But it was like, man, if I stopped for a minute and really took a second to rest, I was afraid like every single piece of my life would fall apart unless I stuck to this like really grinding, grueling schedule that I had created for myself. Nobody expected it of me. I just thought that this is how I had to live in order to be capable and responsible and take care of all the things. So this is what I want you to do. You have to give yourself that permission to grieve what was lost and really be honest about what it is you're actually grieving. Because maybe, like we talked about before, it might not just be the marriage that you're grieving. Maybe it's the future that you had imagined, right? The security you thought you had, that family dynamic, picture perfect family, in the photos that you always wanted, the identity that you held as a wife, that dream of, sitting on the rocking chairs, right, on the front porch with the person you thought was going to be your life partner who no longer is. And just all those years, if you were married for a very long time, that you feel you've lost. So I want you to write it down. I want you to name it. And I just want you to pray through it. Okay. Because grief that's named can begin to heal. But grief that we don't acknowledge and we try to deny will stay stuck in our body, and it will come out in all of these other kind of ways that we do not want. Number 3, survival mode becomes familiar even when it's miserable. And this is where it really gets tricky, because after a while, survival mode becomes familiar, right? You may not like it. You may be exhausted by it, but it becomes normal. And sometimes what's familiar feels a lot safer than what's truly free for our lives. So let me say that again, all right? Sometimes what's familiar feels safer than what's truly freeing. Because healing requires openness, right? It requires that vulnerability that sometimes we don't want to be. It requires change, which Lord knows we don't like a lot of change. We like things to stay consistent. And when you've been hurt, your system often wants predictability more than it wants the freedom. So even though like the survival mode phase is draining, it can still feel like strangely comforting because you know how to do it, right? You've been doing it for so long. You know how to stay busy. You know how to run that calendar every day. You know how to stay productive and get all the things done. You know how to avoid certain things. You know how to numb yourself out, whether that's watching Netflix or just doing things that are not great for your life, eating those snacks, chocolate late at night. You know what I mean, right? You know how to stay in control. But what you may not know yet is how to rest, like I was talking about before, how to receive help, how to get a counselor, how to get a divorce coach who's going to walk you through getting to the next phase of your life, right? Moving forward, what steps do I take? You might not know how to trust yourself again. How do I dream again, right? What do my dreams look like? How to imagine a life beyond just getting through the day. So what you have to do here is start noticing where familiarity is keeping you stuck, right? I want you to ask yourself, what patterns do I keep repeating because they feel safe? What would healing require me to do differently? And what feels uncomfortable right now because it's new, not because it's wrong. So sometimes the next right step feels scary, not because it's bad, but because it's unfamiliar. Okay, number 4, a lot of women stay stuck because their identity got wrapped up in being the so-called strong one. This one hits a lot of women hard because after divorce, many women become extremely self-reliant and independent. And on one hand, yes, there's strength in that, right? And for the first time, they are figuring out life on their own. They're managing, in some cases, all the finances. They're going out there and having to find either a different place to live or possibly getting a job for the first time or whatever that might look like for you. But you've figured all the things out, right? And you've handled like these really difficult things that maybe you never thought you could handle. And you kept going. And that matters and it counts for something, right? But sometimes being strong becomes code for never asking for help, never really slowing down, never admitting you're struggling to anyone, even yourself, and never letting anyone see the real you. And when that happens, strength really becomes more like armor. And armor may protect you, right? But it also keeps all of the good things out, like love and support and healing. And there's a difference between being strong and then also being really guarded. So you really want to ask yourself, have I made this new me, this independent me, my new identity? And do I equate, needing support with being weak? Am I always being the helper, but never the one who really lets herself be helped? And your healing requires safe support, not because you're weak, but because you're a human being. God did not design you to carry this season alone. And you really want to look at all of these different pieces. Are you really asking for help, or are you trying to work this out on your own? Because God never meant for us to do any of this alone. But number 5, survival mode thrives when your mind is full of fear. Survival mode and fear really go hand in hand. After divorce, fear can sound like a lot of things. But for instance, like, what if I never recover financially from this? What if I never feel normal again? What if I end up alone forever for the rest of my life, right? What if I can't trust myself anymore? And what if I fail? What if I tried to move forward and I get hurt once again? So fear will keep your focus, focused on all of those worst case scenarios, all the awfulizing things that could happen. And it makes you brace for impact, right? It keeps you reactive instead of being intentional about where you want your life to go. It convinces you that the safest thing to do is just stay small, right? Stay guarded and stay stuck because it's easier and you're used to that and it's comfortable. But fear is this terrible leader. We don't want fear to lead our lives. So I want you to start paying attention to the thoughts that are driving, your daily life. What are you rehearsing over and over and ruminating on in your mind all the time? Because those thoughts you repeat really become the lens that you will live through. This is where, like we talked about before, renewing your mind is so, so critical. It matters so much. You've got to begin replacing, those fear-driven thinking thoughts with truth-driven thinking, okay? Scripture, biblical truth about what God says he wants for your life, not about the fearful thoughts you have about what could happen in your future. And that doesn't mean, you have to pretend that these hard things aren't hard, because they are. I know. I have lived it. I've walked through it. And they feel extremely hard and they're extremely difficult. And it's so easy to be led by that fear when you're walking through this season after divorce. So it just means you have to ask, what is true right now? And what is God asking you to really trust him with today? What are those fearful thoughts you're having, but God is saying otherwise? I have hope and a plan for your future. He wants you to know that he has an amazing plan for your future, and that no matter what you're thinking right now, thinking that you don't have a future and that you're scared to death of your future, that he has a great future plan for you, better than anything you could possibly imagine. It means asking yourself, what would I do differently if fear wasn't running the show? What would you do if you had no fear? Because fear will tell you stay stuck in that survival mode. Faith will say, take that next step. And that's what you want to do. Number 6, you get out of survival mode, and one small decision at a time is how you get out. This is so important. You do not get out of survival mode by just snapping your fingers and becoming a whole new woman overnight. It takes time. You get out of it slowly, and sometimes it's slower than we want, right? But you will get out. One choice at a time, one single boundary that you set at a time, one simple truth you start to believe at a time, one act of self-respect at a time, and just like one surrendered prayer at a time. It's not glamorous. This is not glamorous work that you're having to do in this season, but it's truly holy work that will change the trajectory of your future. And here are some practical steps that will help, okay? I want you to slow down long enough to notice how you really feel, because you can't heal what you won't acknowledge, right? We talked about that. I want you to stop glorifying exhaustion. I'm thinking, I'm so tired, but I just keep going. You are not the Energizer Bunny. You are not Wonder Woman, even though people might think you are. But being tired all the time is not a badge of honor. Build small rhythms of safety and peace, okay? Whether that's 10 minutes in the morning, a quiet morning. If you can get more than 10 minutes, kudos to you, because I know it can be difficult sometimes, but maybe you are in a season where you can grab an hour in the morning of quiet. You can go take a walk outside. You can spend 5 minutes in prayer, telling God about how you really, really feel right now. You can journal in your journal honestly, not pretend thoughts that you might have, but the real deal, what you're feeling. You can breathe before you say something or before you react. You can let someone support you during this season, right? You can have a coach like me. You can talk to someone who gets it, who can help you take the next steps forward. You can get a counselor, which I highly recommend too. They're fantastic to help you process your feelings and the past and what you've walked through. You can talk to a trusted friend. You can be a part of a safe community who gets it, like the Midlife Comeback Club, right? Where all of these women are walking through a similar season like you after divorce. You can start asking like bigger questions, not just how do I survive today, but you could actually ask yourself, like, what would healing actually look like for me? Or what do I need right now? You know, what kind of woman do I really want to become on the other side of all of this? And that's when that survival mode will really start to lose its grip on your life. And number 7, God has more for you than survival. That's what I really want you to hear, right? For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future, right? Jeremiah 29:11. He has so much more for your life than you could ever possibly imagine. And I want to end this teaching part with all of this because this is truly the heart of it. And that's actually my favorite verse in the Bible. So many women, silently settle into this survival mode and they assume that this is just their life now. This is how it's going to be. And this is not the full life that God has for you. I want you to know that. Jesus didn't say he came so you could just barely get by. He came so that you may have life and you could have it more abundantly. That's what he wants for you. Now, abundant life after divorce may not look like what you had originally imagined, right? But it can still be full of joy. It can still be peaceful. It can still be purposeful. You can still have an amazing calling on your life that God wants to bestow on your life now to change your entire future if you'll let him. It can still be so beautiful beyond your wildest imagination if you let God work in your life. So survival mode will just say, just make it through, get through the day. But real healing, that says you get to live again. And you get to live this entirely new life that maybe you did not expect you were going to have to live. But the life that you still have and the future life that God wants to give you now, that shift, it's just going to change everything. So if this episode hit home for you today and you're realizing, wow, Lorianne, I really have been stuck in this survival mode, I want to invite you to take the next step and join us inside the Midlife Comeback Club, because that's exactly the kind of work that we're doing inside of my annual group coaching membership. We really talk about the real stuff, okay? The emotional stuff that you're going through, all of the mindset stuff that we struggle with, the identity stuff, the faith stuff, all of it. And inside, you'll get my transformational 90-day program that will completely change the course of your life over 90 days. So many women have already walked through it and they've seen such amazing transformation. We have weekly live group coaching calls for Q&A with me, Lori Ann, your certified Christian life coach. And there's a whole entire community of Christian women who are healing after divorce, just like you, and learning how to stop surviving and start living again. So you don't have to stay stuck where you are, okay? You don't have to figure this out alone, and you definitely don't have to keep carrying all of this by yourself. So click the link in the show notes and come join us inside the Midlife Comeback Club. And girl, let me leave you with this. Survival mode may have gotten you through the crisis, but it is not where your story ends. You are allowed to heal. You are allowed to take a moment to rest, and you are allowed to rebuild your life. And you are absolutely allowed to live again. I'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining me. Hey girl, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. And if so, would you take 30 seconds and share it with a woman who might really need it right now? Also, please leave me a quick review over on Apple Podcasts. It truly helps this show reach more women who are ready for their divine comeback. And until next time, keep choosing faith over fear, and I will meet you back here next week for another episode.